A wise author once said that books let us travel without moving our feet. But while a good book gives us a momentary escape from reality, a great book inspires us to be a better version of ourselves.
Because you know I'm all about those books, start reading.
Unfortunately for some people, certain books have turned them into cold-blooded, real-life villains, proving that truth can sometimes be stranger than fiction. Here are 9 books that inspired real-life crimes. What's up, Acnatics? This is Discovery Amuse, serving up your daily dose of the most outrageous, outlandish, and out-of-this-world fun facts. Stay tuned till number 1 to find out about the literary classic that inspired a cult leader to wreak havoc, which ultimately took a number of innocent lives.
We must burn the books, Montag. All the books.
Number 9. Rage by Stephen King. Stephen King is a true master of the horror genre, but did you know that one of his novels actually inspired a lot of real-life horrors? King's 1977 psychological thriller Rage tells the story of a troubled high school student who murdered his algebra teacher and held his classmates hostage. At least 4 real-life crimes were reported to have been inspired by the book's protagonist, Charlie Decker. In April of 1988, Jeffrey Lynn Cox, a senior at San Gabriel High School, barged into a classroom with his rifle to take his classmates hostage. But instead of opening fire, he ordered the teacher out of the room. It was a good thing that his classmates were able to disarm him and no one was harmed. In September the following year, a similar case made headlines. This time, it was a senior at Jackson County High School in Kentucky named Dustin Pierce who took a history class hostage, which led to a 9-hour standoff with the police. Scott Pennington, a student at East Carter High School in Kentucky, also admitted to acting out King's novel when he fatally shot his English teacher and the school's custodian in January of 1993. Frontier Middle School student Barry Lucatus from Washington also opened fire at his school in February of 1996 and killed 2 students and his algebra teacher. Lucatus was resentenced in 2017.
What I did was weak and it was evil and it was senseless. It doesn't replace what has been taken from you.
And in December of 1997, a certain Michael Carneal from Heath High School in Kentucky fatally shot 3 students and injured 5 others during a prayer meeting, no less.
I remember even hearing like 3 slow pops, and all of a sudden there was like a spray of bullets.
All of these violent incidents ultimately led to Stephen King discontinuing the printing of Rage for good.
I felt that it was a part of that became a part of a fantasy scenario with these people, and I didn't want it to happen with anybody else.
If you thought that was insane, stay tuned till number 1 because that book became the basis of a religious cult's terror attack. Number 8. The Fashionable Adventures of Joshua Craig by David G. Phillips. When famed American journalist and novelist David Graham Phillips wrote fictional novels, he often draws inspiration from his personal experiences for the story's plot. This was certainly the case with his 1909 book, The Fashionable Adventures of Joshua Craig. The story revolves around a young man who moves to Washington and gets sucked into a world controlled by money, power, and women. However, this book put his own real-life adventures to a devastating halt. In January of 1911, Phillips was shot outside the Princeton Club in New York City. The suspect was a Harvard-educated violinist named Fitzhugh Coyle Goldsboro. You see, Goldsboro was a paranoid man who firmly believed that his sister was the basis for the quote-unquote complacent heroine in the book. He assumed that Phillips shamed his family, who were prominent in Maryland, hence his act of misguided revenge. Number 7. The Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie. When the book The Satanic Verses by Indian British author Salman Rushdie was published in 1988, it quickly became one of the most controversial novels of the modern day.
I get it, Novak shouted back as his fist accidentally punched Saladin in his newly enlarged testicles. Hey, hey, howled Steen with tears in his eyes. Listen, here's an even better one. No wonder he's so f***ing horny.
Its fanciful and satirical use of Islam caused an uproar among the Muslims, who accused Rushdie of blasphemy. It also put the lives of Rushdie and everyone involved with the book in grave danger.
But if you want me to throw some light on the Satanic verses, I do agree that Salman Rushdie has abused our beloved Prophet Muhammad, may peace be upon him. He has abused his wives, etc.
In 1989, Iranian religious leader Ayatollah Khomeini issued a fatwa, or an Islamic legal opinion, that directed Muslims to kill Rushdie and his editors and publishers. Rushdie then went into hiding with a $14 million bounty on his head. Copies of the books were burned in Britain, and several bookstores were also bombed.
When we are in a situation in which a book is under an anti-democratic censoring attack, we can't afford to let them win.
The book's Japanese translator, Hitoshi Igarashi, was assassinated in 1991. Meanwhile, Italian translator Ettore Capriolo and Norwegian publisher William Nygaard survived their attacks but sustained significant injuries. Number 6. The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger. Believe it or not, this book inspired the murder of one of music's biggest and most influential icons, John Lennon.
Imagine all the people.
J.D. Salinger's subversive coming-of-age novel, The Catcher in the Rye, with all of its unsettling themes of teenage angst, identity, belonging, and alienation, is regarded as one of the best novels of the 20th century. In fact, its protagonist, Holden Caulfield, has become an icon for teenage rebellion. Sadly, he also became a negative role model for Lennon's murderer, Mark David Chapman. On December 8, 1980, Chapman fatally shot Lennon outside of his residence in New York City.
I was stunned. I didn't know what to do. I took the Catcher in the Rye out of my pocket. I paced. I tried to read it. I just couldn't wait, Larry, until those police got there.
Chapman has also felt a deep connection with the character of Holden Caulfield, and he even claimed that Lennon's murder is the 27th chapter of Salinger's 26-chapter novel. Number 5. The Anarchist Cookbook by William Powell. At the height of the counterculture movement in the early 70s, a then-teenager, William Powell, protested against the U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. In response to the war, he wrote a book called The Anarchist Cookbook, although anarchists themselves have denounced the literary work.
Freedom is based on respect, and respect must be earned by the spilling of blood.
It wasn't just any book, though. It contained instructions on making explosives, illicit drugs, communication hacking devices, and other weapons. I know what you're thinking. How on earth did this get greenlit by the publisher? And yet, it did make it to the bookshelves. Years after it was published, several bombings and attacks reportedly used the book as reference material. This includes the Grand Central Terminal bombing and the TWA flight hijacking in 1976, FBI headquarters bombing in 1981, the Columbine High School shooting in 1999, and the racially charged London nail bombings carried out by David Copeland, also in 1999.
My aim was political, was to cause a racial war in this country.
Right. So you would hope if I planted the bombs in Brixton and Brick Lane,
there'd be a backlash
from the
ethnic communities.
As for Powell, he eventually did try to stop the book's production, especially after he became a born-again Christian. But the publisher who owned the copyright still continued circulation until 1991. Number 4. The Turner Diaries by Andrew Macdonald. If the previous work claimed to be the recipe book for weapons and drugs, this next one is dubbed the Bible of the Racist Right. In 1978, sci-fi novel Turner Diaries by Andrew Macdonald tells the story of a violent revolution in the U.S. that led to the fall of the federal government, a nuclear war, and a battle against races. Because of its violent plot, the New York Times labeled it as explicitly racist and anti-Semitic. Well, it's not really a surprise once you find out the real identity of the author. Andrew Macdonald is actually a pseudonym used by American author William Luther Pierce, who was a prominent neo-Nazi white supremacist. Even his own son Kelvin condemns Pierce's hateful past.
I wasn't even able to talk about it, probably well into my 30s. I was afraid to have anybody know who my father was.
The book became a massive influence on white nationalism and the white genocide theory. It also inspired at least 40 hate crimes and terrorist acts, which have resulted in the deaths of at least 200 people. One of the deadliest attacks linked to the book was the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing that killed more than 160 people.
The indictment charges that Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, former Army buddies with a grudge against the government, planned the bombing, selected the Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City as their target, bought and stole materials for the bomb, and built it.
Number 3. The Collector by John Fowles. For aspiring writers, getting their first book published is a major career milestone. But what if that long-awaited literary debut becomes the inspiration of several heinous crimes? This is what happened to John Fowles' 1963 thriller novel, The Collector. The book's plot revolved around a psychopath named Frederick Clegg who kidnaps a female art student named Miranda and keeps her locked up in the cellar of a farmhouse.
How long are you going to keep me here?
I don't know. It depends.
It not only inspired a movie adaptation in 1965, but it also enthused kidnappers, serial killers, and other criminals to take a page out of Frederick Clegg's book. The Collector is said to have inspired serial killers Leonard Lake and Charles Ng in their abduction of teenage girls and murder of at least 25 people in 1985. They also infamously videotaped the rape and torture of their victims before shooting or strangling them to death.
The local coroner says 5 bodies have been found here so far. The Calaveras County Sheriff once told me, though, he believes there are as many as 20 victims, though, buried on the property.
Number 2. The Secret Agent by Joseph Conrad. In a nutshell, this 1907 spy fiction novel tells about a secret agent posing as a shopkeeper who was tasked to blow up the Greenwich Observatory in an act of redemption.
Explosion. Plant a bomb.
If you fail, I will ensure the British know that you are on our payroll.
They'll kill me.
Joseph Conrad's tale of anarchism and espionage, which was based on a story from an actual bombing attempt in 1894, was hailed by the New York Times as the most beautiful novelistic study of terrorism. You could even argue that it was so beautifully written that it motivated one of America's most infamous domestic terrorists, Ted Kaczynski, aka the Unabomber.
This was someone who was deeply disturbed. And if you can't deal with society as it is, or people as they are, how are you going to deal with a society that's changing?
Between 1978 and 1995, Kaczynski mailed a total of 16 sophisticated bombs to industry experts whom he thought were advancing modern technology and destroying nature. 3 people were killed and 23 more were injured during his brutal displays of anarchy.
Number 1, he did not believe he was mentally ill. And number 2, he did not want to taint his philosophical view where he was trying to influence the public as being discarded as the ravings of a madman.
Kaczynski is reportedly a huge fan of Conrad's work since he was young, and he identified most of the character of the Professor, a psychopathic anarchist who carries around explosives under his coat and has an intense hatred for the weak. Before we go to our number 1 pick, do us a solid and make sure to smash the subscribe button and hit the notification bell. Don't forget to choose all so you won't miss out on any of our latest life-changing, boredom-busting content, and of course, be sure to turn on notifications in your app settings. Number 1. The Foundation series by Isaac Asimov. This trilogy of sci-fi books published between 1951 and 1953 revolves around the character Hari Seldon, a mathematician who discovered the science of true prediction. He tried to warn the Galactic Empire of a forthcoming downfall, but the government didn't believe him, and so he formed a secret society in an attempt to save humanity.
I'm worried people believe I can. They don't like the future I predict.
The critically acclaimed literary series is believed to have heavily influenced Star Wars and is generally considered one of the greatest works of science fiction of all time. Sadly, it also influenced the Japanese doomsday cult called Aum Shinriko, or Aleph, which carried out a deadly sarin gas attack in the Tokyo subway in 1995.
瞑想するぞ、瞑想するぞ、瞑想するぞ、瞑想するぞ、瞑想するぞ。今の苦しみは原因である。この修行によって今の苦しみを打ち砕くことができる。
Just like in the Foundation books, the group's leader Shoko Asahara believed that humanity will soon end and only those who joined the cult would be spared. One of their top guys, astrophysicist Hideo Murai, credited Asimov's work as their blueprint for their long-term purification plans. This included the sarin gas attacks that killed 14 people and injured more than 5,000 civilians.
They didn't think in those terms of we're prepared to kill as many people. They were actually talking about it as saving people at the same time. In other words, if we're killing you, we're actually saving you.
So, which of these literary works have you already read? What did you think of them? Sound off your thoughts in the comments section below. Take home any of our exclusive gear by browsing our merch shelf or clicking the link in the video description. And while you're at it, take our quiz to find out how you can earn extra cash online doing what you do best. Awesome, right? If that story gave you the creeps, then this one will surely keep you up all night. Don't miss our ranking of the 10 scariest horror video games. Till then, keep calm and read a book, Factnatics, and see you in the next video.